So welcome to the Node.js Node add-on or Node API team meeting for October 25th, 2024. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the board. Any announcements or anything people would like to share before we jump into that? Okay, if not, I will share that screen. I think there we go. So anything on the done side we want to revisit or touch on? Maybe we don't need to look at those since they're done. Okay, has PR anything there that I guess this one, it sounds like there was a discussion last week.
Well, yeah, it's about whether we should or not strip experimental APIs in the Node API headers package
Right.
because it will make the workflow easier to just include the experimental and the APIs in the package since we don't have to we can reuse existing workflows that use Node API headers to test experimental APIs instead of switching to, different workflows. So I was thinking about that if we included the experimental APIs in the Node API headers, we can just use it in Node add-on APIs for compatibility testing. And we introduced the compatibility testing for stable APIs, but we cannot do that because the experimental APIs was missing in the package. So yeah, that's basically the idea. But I think I traced back to the history discussion that Michael, you mentioned that maybe we don't want people to use experimental APIs with Node API header package. So yeah, we'd like to hear if
Yeah,
you are concerned by that.
I think it kind of was around versioning and stuff like that because they can change. Like
Yeah,
having the API headers as divorced from the implementation makes sense, right? But like as and I'm trying to remember exactly like my thinking, but like I think as soon as we include the experimental ones and they can be different, then it's kind of like, well, which versions of the experimental ones, right? And so it's like it seems
yeah.
safer. I know we were getting into like some discussions of like, well, how do we handle that case if we've made that change? And it was like, if we just don't include them at all, then we really don't have to worry about the edge cases.
Yeah, I think that can make sense that since experimental APIs can change across different Node API headers version, that definition, that declaration could be different across different Node API headers package. But we never guaranteed that um, how is the version stability guarantees in Node API headers package? I think we didn't provide that version
No,
stability guarantees.
yeah, true, but I guess even like if you look at it, the headers could be different for different versions of Node, right?
Yeah,
Right. So at least if like,
well,
if it's
yeah,
experimental and you're using the ones in Node, you're matching like what you're using matches the version of Node you're using the experimental stuff with. And that maybe is a little bit better than like generic one, which is like, well, it only will ever, well, who knows which one it matches, right?
well, I think I haven't actually tried how the test workflow would be in Node API headers, in Node add-on APIs with Node API headers. But I think that your concern regarding different Node.js versions with different Node API headers versions. could be a problem. I think that could be a problem if we test it against different Node.js versions.
Yeah, because like if you're trying to say, let's test an older version, there's only going to be one experimental which matches maybe the latest thing, and it won't match what was experimental in that earlier version.
I
I
mean,
think I think for like if you build your add-on declaring that you want a released version of Node API, then that will work across all versions of Node,
Yeah,
right? Like that's the
yeah,
baseline, right?
yeah.
Now,
yeah,
if you turned on experimental, then expect instability. I mean, we are saying that, and you are buying into that by saying define an API experimental. So
But it's not just the experiment, like the instability part. I think it's the like, Shenzong saying like we want to use it the one version so that we can detach from what's in Node and test against all the versions, but that still might not work because there might be one version of experimental for 20 and there might be a different version of experimental for 22. And so
yeah,
using the definition of 22 isn't going to work with 20.
that's
So
right. Yeah, see, that's why that's why we basically we want to get to the point where we have a checkpoint for everything that we do in experimental with these like has this flag, has that flag, right? Because then when you build against the version of the headers, then at least at build time you will know whether it has it or not. And then you have chosen to build with flags as they are, and so you know what versions of Node this will work on, right?
yeah, I
yeah,
guess so go ahead.
yeah. I mean, my primary use case was reusing existing Node add-on API workflows, test workflows. So it sounds to me that this is not going to work anyway, because given the different Node.js versions, so maybe we can just test with different Node.js versions for experimental APIs and not for, yeah. Yeah, please go ahead. I'm just thinking about how the use case would be like with or without the experimental APIs in the API headers.
Yeah, like I guess we might be able to manage the experimental in a way that it would be okay, but um I don't think we have so far. And like the question is, would we want to really take on that constraint as something extra, right? Like for the number of people who would actually use it. So like I guess the problem, like Chenzong, the problem you were trying to solve is that the the tests themselves, like I guess, yeah, help me
The problem,
understand. Yeah.
yeah, the problem I was trying to solve is that we had a compatibility issue in Node add-on API 2.1, 2.2.0,
Yeah.
and that compatibility issue is between different Node API headers version, which also suggests that Node add-on API could have a compatibility issue with old Node.js LTS versions. Like we have Node 22.9, but Node API could be there could be a incompatibility between Node add-on API between Node.js 22.0.0 because it's a old LTS Node.js LTS version. I think that's an issue that we want to address
Yep.
with the compatibility test. So we already addressed the stable Node API compatibility in Node add-on API because we introduced the Node API headers test, but the experimental APIs are not being tested in this compatibility test suite because we don't have these declarations in Node API headers package.
I guess the thing is they could actually be incompatible, couldn't they? Because like experimental could be different. Like we could have changed them. In 20, the experimental one could be X, and in 22, the experimental could be Y.
Yeah. They could not be compatible by intention because we changed it. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I may need to think about it, whether or not we really want the experimental compatibility test suite. And for this particular issue, I think we could merge we could land the pull request, the fix by Kevin first to strip all the experimental declarations first and revisit if we really want to include experimental in the package. Yeah, that's the pull request. No, I think Kevin had submitted a pull request.
Right. Okay. So that's the pull request, which is
Yeah,
here.
52.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that seems, I mean, it seems reasonable to me to land this, and then like if we decide that, hey, we could add those, we could figure out a solution that we think works, then we can always add them back in. But
Yeah, this is just a fix up to the
yeah.
current approach. So yeah, I think this should not be blocked by our follow-up work.
Okay. So we can I guess we just need some reviews and then it could move forward.
Yeah, because the condition is much more complex than the original one because of the complex um, complex microguts in the headers.
Yeah, I think
That's
if we,
right
we
then.
have some kind of a runtime check, if certain experimental features available or not in the specific version of Node, I think it would probably help us. So we could ship all the different header files without issues. Then
Well,
with what we're missing, we can't at runtime tell you exactly if certain experiments included or not.
for runtime detection, I think we need to think about if it's a overkill for this detection, because ultimately we want the experimental API to be available as a stable API via Node API version numbers, right?
I'm glad you brought it up, Vladimir. It sounds like it's kind of ripening. That ticket is ripening into what should be a pull request right now, because ultimately we want to follow through, right? And we want Node to behave as if something or other, right? And right now we can detect that build time, but then if you run it against the wrong version of Node, that's it, right? And then if we had the runtime detection, we could refine our algorithm and we could refuse the module just as Node does now with non-Node API modules. But the refusal would be, if one of the flags is missing, right? Like I don't have, the 15th bit, but the add-on is requesting the 15th bit, and so goodbye add-on, but otherwise, then we're good to go. All right, okay, fine. I'm taking the hint here. I'd like to get started on that,
We
but now I have extra motivation.
we do kind of have that though, right? Like we already have that in the Node API versions, right? It's like, but it's coarser. It's like you
Exactly.
have Node
It's
API
coarse.
version 10, yes or no. So we're only really talking about experimental features.
Yeah.
And the question is like, how
Good
complicated, how
point.
much management do we want for the experimental features, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
that's kind of the
This,
trade-off, right? Is like, do
Mhm.
we probably can figure out something, but like, how much complexity do we want to take on for it?
One thing that we should maybe look at is how widespread this usage of experimental is. Because in a way, if we had this, if we did all this, then we're kind of saying like experimental isn't really experimental because we're giving you lots and lots and lots and lots
Right.
of help, and that will on the other hand encourage usage of experimental, right? And so more and more people will rely on it like for production purposes, and that's not exactly the intent of it. So
Yeah.
there is something to be said for just sticking to policy and just saying, well, it's experimental, so don't expect miracles.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if we have a problem that everybody's using it, like maybe we need to make sure we move things forward faster from out of experimental or something. Like there's different ways
Yeah, yeah,
of achieving
Yeah.
a solution.
yeah.
Yeah. I agree that if really it was used in large, we should probably promote that to stable versions instead of keeping it in experimental.
Like maybe we need something more, some tooling even to remind us like, hey, these functions have been experimental for 6 months, right? Like they should be promoted because honestly, I haven't looked for a while, and maybe, there's some that have long past the time where we should have promoted.
Can we add like a standing issue maybe to our board? And just at every meeting we can check, like we write a date as a comment to the issue, and then we say, okay, the date is not older than whatever interval we pick, and then we're like, okay, move on to the next issue. But when it becomes older, we can say, okay, all right, let's think about a release, maybe solve it procedurally.
Yeah, there are some APIs, like for example, creating symbols or something like so it can be really kind of promoted, right?
Yeah. So I think like the manual creating an issue, like if we just add an item, so like we could say review APIs for pro. So I can just add that for now, but I we might want to think about some tooling because I can just see we're going to come to this and it's like, well, we haven't looked. If we had some tooling that actually could figure that out, probably wouldn't be that hard to have an action that was like, okay, as it hits 6 months, flag it up somewhere in a list or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Sounds good.
good way to start with just having it there as a reminder to take a look. And okay, so I did put that, I think I put that comment on there. Where was it? Over here? If I actually hit
Yeah. That's the one
return
we discussed.
this one. Oh, maybe I didn't. Right, I was just going to add this comment that we talked about today, and I think sounds like we've agreed, like, let's let this land, and then we'll figure out what to do afterwards. Okay.
Am I seeing this correctly? The last release of API was in 2021? That can't be right.
Of Node add-on API?
No, of Node API, like when we moved things out of experimental. That cannot be right.
That seems like too long, but it has been a
Yeah.
while, right? Like, I would easily believe it's been more than a year. Three
Oh,
years,
wait.
More
I
than
think,
2 years,
a
I
bit
will
much.
tell you. I think like even this new finalizer has been in experimental phase for more than a year already.
Right. So I
Yeah.
think like that's what I was thinking. Like, yeah, maybe we should start to get stuff out of experimental, and that'll reduce the gap that like if we're not testing experimental things, it'll greatly reduce the chances of, surprises anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder what our policy, normal policy would be about promoting experimental APIs to stable APIs.
I
I
think,
think
let's see, do we have that written down? Yeah. Oops, not. I think we have a policy for what should be considered, and it might include some contributing. My question is, where would that be? So,
think we
Releases
have
Node
a
API. Contributing releases Node API is a good candidate at the R's.
we also have a
oh, okay.
a in the adding new Node API document, we have a exit criteria for experimental
Ah,
status.
there, yeah, that's the one I was looking for.
At the bottom of the document, yeah, exit criteria from experimental status.
Right.
Basically, I think it's just that all Node.js versions,
Right.
all Node.js LTS versions have implemented this API, and we can confirm that it's working with, basically it's working with Node add-on API, then it should be ready to go.
Yeah, it says like usage by a published real world module. I guess Node add-on API actually it's one example of that. And then this one I think is a little bit less relevant now because we used to have 2 VMs.
And it's hard to track too. Like we
Yeah.
don't really have good communication with other implementers of Node API.
I think some, like I think some implementations tried to link into original Node API pull requests that we can have quick link. Maybe I can find an example.
Yeah, like maybe we could add in like no objections from alternate VMs or something like that.
Yeah, also we have a GitHub teams dedicated for implementers. We can tag them in the version pull request, and they can comment on the pull request that they are good with the new version, and we should be ready to go.
Yeah, I'll
It's a
take
good
the
idea.
action to update this document to include something, to put a PR that it like does something along those lines. Like basically the requirement will be like mention that team, and we don't get any objections from other implementers after like a week or two kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like, I
that
think
should go
would
in the
be a
release.
reasonable-
That should be the release steps, I think.
Yeah. For example, I posted a link in the chat that this pull request has been linked into other implementations. That was the EM and API. It was linked at the bottom of the pull request.
Right, okay. So somebody added that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems like your screen is not shared with the
Oh, sorry, yeah, okay. There, it was in it.
pull request. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, you can see that there's a link to other implementations.
Yeah, I think that's a good, like, we can change it to like, we've given them a heads up that we're planning to make it, plan to make it stable, and there's like, nobody's complained, right? And then we go ahead. Okay.
So should I start the release process? Start drafting a PR?
Yeah, I think if you want to draft a PR to promote things to like the next Node API version, because like it would be a new Node API version with these ones now non-experimental, that makes sense.
Okay. I think for next version, we still have issues with Node API, Node add-on API support. Like, I think you can go ahead to the project board that I think there is an issue with Node add-on API with the latest basic EMV release. So maybe we can address that before we create a version promotion.
Sure. Which one is the one here?
It's the
This one?
object wrap leak
Okay.
introduced in 8.2.0. That this it's just submitted an hour ago.
Okay.
So I think we probably need to investigate this before we make a new version, because we need to make sure that it's not related to our latest.
Right. Let's not promote the methods until yeah, sounds like it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, the finalizers can be probably still be for a while, but we have a bunch of other changes, which maybe
Exactly. We don't need to promote everything. Like we could
Yeah.
leave especially since we've just introduced the finalizer stuff into the Node add-on API, those I could see us easily waiting longer.
Yeah, good point. Like we can restrict ourselves to like symbol 4 and the external strings and the property keys. Those we can stabilize. Okay. All right.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay,
They
makes
look
sense.
like low-hanging fruits, but finalizers probably may require a little bit more
Yeah.
baking.
Yep.
Cool.
So when using OpConnect does not override a finalizer, the memory leak. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. It was submitted an hour ago, so I haven't had a chance to look into it.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about this one. Anything else in the half PR that we should chat about?
Well, there were two pull requests in Node add-on APIs. The first one is this one that it's a quick small pull request linked
Yep.
this one that fixes the type definition of the Node add-on APIs that's not relevant to JavaScript execution. So it's just marking them as basic env env instead of env.
Yep.
And yeah, that's it.
Right. Yeah, because none of those. Okay, that all
Yep.
makes sense to me.
They are base like adjust is basic in core as well.
Yeah, they are basic in core.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no, just quick looking, that definitely okay. So that makes sense to me. Anything more we should chat about on that one, or?
There is a publish process change on the npm publish script in the CI. The link, it's in the Node add-on API.
Sure.
Yeah, the first one.
Yep.
So basically, this pull request will make our npm publish to the npm registry as official, because npm registry can recognize that this publish is made by an automation instead of a human interfered publish, so that we can have confidence that the publish is made by a automation. An example of this is that I posted a link in the chat that on the npm website there will be a green check on the package that marking the package as the automated officially published package. The green mark is on the right side of the version number,
Right,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, yeah. So you can see that it shows it's built and designed on GitHub Actions instead of our human published.
Yep.
So yeah, basically that's it.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that. The people have worked to like gives you more supply chain security type confidence and
Yeah.
simple change. So like
Yeah, exactly.
say let's just any objections to just landing it?
Just one curious thing. This ID token write, what is it that we're giving write access to here?
It gives the GitHub Actions access to the GitHub open somewhat ID. It's just needed for this connection to the Git npm registry to know that this publish was made on GitHub Actions.
Okay, so okay, npm publish permissions, contents read, okay, and ID token write. What
Yeah.
is it writing? What is it now writing that it was not able to write to before? That's my question.
We enabled strict GitHub Actions permissions that this ID is by default only read, from what I can tell, which
So it
means
says
that,
Oh, I see.
yeah,
So
please go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Okay, gotcha.
so I think it's like that creating that OIDC token is part of the process of generating the signature.
Okay.
And that write is allowing that call to be made.
Okay. So to create, okay,
Yeah,
so it's basically create another token, right? Yeah, to generate an OIDC token. Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna go and land that one. Okay, so I'm going back to the board. There we go. Any other in like has PR we should look at? We looked at this one, talked about this one. This one, this is, I guess Kevin's still a draft. Failing tests, I guess not too much to discuss on that one necessarily then. In progress, anything on these?
yeah, this one we were talking about.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
That one, and then this one, I don't know, Vladimir, any updates or just things you want us to
Yeah,
discuss on
still
that?
working on it.
Okay. In our to-do, I don't know if there's anything in the to-do that people want us to chat about. Okay, if not, we'll move on to what's new. So add typing to most examples. I know we did discuss that. I'm not sure. I don't have any more insight or comments on that one unless anybody else does. That's just a chore. Add
I
conditions.
think this is the podcast Kevin worked on. Yeah, we commented on it.
Right, okay.
Probably we can move this to in progress.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. Nope. Wrong one.
Yeah, about, yeah, here.
This one. There we go.
Right.
Okay. Allow catching all exceptions. I think that's the one we just poked into too, did we?
Yeah, Kevin is working on it.
Still, I guess that's like,
Maybe move
that's
to
in progress as
Yeah.
well, right? These transferable clone objects.
I think this was moved in our board because it was reopened, because it was marked as stale and
Right,
reopened.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think we have any action item on this
Okay. So
because
should we
it will
remove?
need
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean it will need more work in the core first, because it will need a JavaScript API first before we introduce it into Node API.
Okay, so that one maybe we just should remove from this board because there's not anything really to
Yeah,
discuss.
sounds good.
Okay. So this one.
Delete from
Delete from
project. I think
project.
that's
Yeah,
it.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think this one is blocked by Kevin's request because it
Okay.
changed nothing, and the change was stripped for experimental API, so it
Okay.
changed nothing.
Okay. So we should just leave that one for now until the other one lands.
Yeah.
Okay. This one you just mentioned, which was just created very much early.
Yeah, I think it will need charge.
Okay. So we'll leave it in need triage for now, and then we'll see next week if we got to it or not. And then this one we just created, and I think, Gabriel, you're gonna put together like a PR to say, like, here's the ones that should be promoted. So that's probably good enough for discussion for this week. Okay, that takes us to the end of the board then. Are there any other things we should chat about this week? Okay, well, if not, thanks for everybody's time, and we'll see you in GitHub in next week.
All right. Talk
See
to you
you.
later.
Okay,
Bye.
talk to you later. Bye.